Had it right on the button.
That was a morning line price, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
They better.
have fun.
Okay, thanks.
Okay,
Pat.
John.
Thanks, Pat.
This is the OTB Television Network.
There's a lot of ground to make up. Zenyatta, if she wins this, will be a super horse. She's starting to pick them off, though. Zenyatta going to hook to the outside. Meanwhile, it's Colonel John. Summerbird in the red cap. But now Zenyatta's come to the outside. Zenyatta coming flying on the grandstand side. Gio Conti on the inside. Summerbird is right there. This is unbelievable. Zenyatta, what a performance. One we'll never forget. Looked impossible, but it is Zenyatta, still unbeaten under Mike Smith. Gio Conti second, Summerbird, and then Richards Kid. What a dramatic performance. One of the most sensational ever. Zenyatta wins the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Down the Stretch. Along with my colleague Mike VIETCH, the racing columnist with the Saratogian, I'm Mark CUSANO, welcoming you to our post-Breeders' Cup show. And over the next 55 minutes, we will be recapping the 8 Breeders' Cup races from last Saturday, highlighted, of course, and you just saw a piece of it, by Zenyatta's historic and very popular victory in the 26th Breeders' Cup Classic. We will also showcase repeat victories by Goldakova and Conduit. And we'll take a look at some local successes back here at Aqueduct. So all of that and more if you stay with us for this, our November 14th edition of Down the Stretch. Partner, good morning.
Good
How
morning,
are you?
Mark.
You ready to
Very
go?
well, thank you, and ready to go to talk about just another wonderful Breeders' Cup, and it looked so good on television, and the racing was so good, and everybody talks horse racing, and that's pretty enjoyable when this happens. So quite a weekend. Wow.
And everybody is talking about what's going to happen with Horse of the Year, and we'll discuss that a little bit later on. But let's get started later in the month. In fact, the last weekend of this month at the Albany Teletheater, the Fall Handicapping Challenge, Saturday and Sunday, the 28th and 29th. And you know, one of the great things about this is you're playing for no takeout. All of the entry fees are returned in prize money, and the top 2 finishers receive free entry, airfare, and hotel to the Horse Player World Series at the Orleans in Vegas. So sign up. You can go to capitalotb.com to get more information on the Fall Handicapping Challenge. Okay, last Saturday at Aqueduct, quite a bit of local success. Here in the Tempted, Alalea number 2, rallying into third on the outside, owned by the Starlight Partners of Jack Wolf and Don Lucarelli, would rally under A. Barcoa to score in her stakes debut by a length and a quarter. The daughter of Pulpit had broken her maiden in her prior start. In fact, partner, the last time she was beaten is when I picked her at Saratoga, and she was like 10 wide around the turn.
Well, she's a blossoming daughter of Pulpit, that is for sure, and she looks like a good, solid future stakes winner. I'm hoping they go Demoiselle with her. I don't know anything about that, but she was a first book Keeneland September yearling from the family of champion Stevie Wonderboy, and she looks like she's got a future.
And in the grassy Red Smith expansion, who will be last on your screen, number 3 in the pink silks, and starting for the first time for trainer Chad Brown, would rally strongly to upset the Red Smith by a length and a quarter at nearly 13-1. Under Channing Hill, and here he comes, swinging to the far outside. Expansion would outfinish Grand Couturier, Spice Route and Long Shot Mr. Universo to capture the grade to event very nicely.
And when he leveled, he really, really took off. And this is the new handicapping angle, first time Chad, because I think he did it with Silver Timber a few months ago. Mile and 3/8 here, family of a Melbourne Cup runner-up. A very, very nice job, Chad. Stakes debut, I think.
That
I think it's a stakes debut.
You may be right. Congratulations. So some very nice local success here at Aqueduct. Now, just before we get into reviewing last Saturday's Breeders' Cup, an announcement about a past Breeders' Cup champion being retired. Kip DeVille, the last horse to win the Breeders' Cup Mile before the domination of Goldie Kova, has been retired. Kip won the mile over the Bog at Monmouth back in 2007. He's been battling some colic problems and laminitis, according to IEAH President Michael Ivarone. The 6-year-old retires with 12 victories from 30 starts and $3.3 million, and he was one of those rare North American milers. That was the type of distance that hit him squarely between the eyes, and when he was good, he was really good.
He was just powerfully brilliant when he was good. You couldn't touch him, and it was all kinds of surfaces. The Monmouth thing was really something.
All right. Let's get to it.
Okay.
A recap of the Saturday Breeders' Cup races from Breeders' Cup 26. And, you know, I said on last week's show that this year's Breeders' Cup post position draw, I thought, was the most eventful in the 26-year history of the event. And it was quite eventful in the juvenile turf for number 11, Interactive. Take a look, the second choice at 3-1 behind number 4, Pounced, the favorite at 2-1. Now, Pounced and Frankie Dettori would sit a very nice inside in behind Trip, but Interactive would be forced to race wide around the first turn, and that's no fault of Kent DeSormo. Despite the early problems caused by the short run into the first turn, Kent would place Interactive just off the leader Bridgetown. All the while, Pounce would be saving ground. Now, the deciding moment in the juvenile turf would come racing around the far turn, when Interactive would fail to handle the turn well. Something quite unusual for a horse with 4 previous starts and for one who's trained by somebody who knows what he's doing. But his bearing out not only cost him dearly, at the same time it allowed Pounced to get out from in behind horses. He would rally inside of Interactive, and the Saturday action began with Europe winning a turf race. What else is new? As Pounced would outfinish a dead game Bridgetown and Interactive to win the juvenile turf.
I'm not in the camp of people. I mean, I know there's a lot of talk about the Breeders' Cup watered itself down. I like these races. I enjoy them very much. I like to bring the turfers together as 2-year-olds. It's not an emphasized thing in this country, so I found it enjoyable. But exhibit number 1 for Mark in the post position draw certainly does happen here. As for Pounced, when he sees daylight after being under a tight hold in quarters, he really takes off late here. It started off the European situation, but a very, very strong effort from Bridgetown off the Woodbine race. And kind of a, really good day, but certainly frustrating day for Kenny McPeak, as a lot of his guys did good, as opposed to some other people with big numbers who had really dreadful days. But he continued on with courage. Interactive, no doubt about it. The wide trip was very, very costly. The winners from the family of a brilliant Irish Derby winner named Assert, and a French Jockey Club winner as well. I guess he's not coming back, right? He's going to go home, I would assume, and point for the big races there. Not so with the juvenile later in the show. So,
why Breeders' Cup officials don't run the juvenile turf races at 1 1/16, the same distance that they run the juvenile races on dirt or pro ride, is beyond me. Because by stretching out to 1 1/16, you give the runners an extra 1/16 of a mile to get into that first turn, so post positions aren't critical. So this makes absolutely no sense to me. But, neither does a lot that Breeders' Cup officials do. John Gosden wins his 2nd consecutive juvenile turf. He won it last year with Donativum. Congratulations to John Gosden and Frankie Dettori. And we are up to our first break on this November 14th edition of the program. Thank you so very much for having joined us. When Michael and I return, we will take a look at the sprint, the juvenile, and a wonderful performance in the mile. As we go to the break, It's the turf sprint. 6.5 furlongs down the hillside course. The 3-1 favorite is number 3, California Flag, who was buried in a suicidal speed duel in this race last year. Now, there were plenty of local connections in this year's turf sprint. Number 10, Canadian Ballet. 11 local partners from the region for the obviously NY stable. Number 11, El Gato Malo, one of our upstate viewers, Bob Carper, an owner in El Gato Malo. And number 2, Silver Timber, trained by former Mechanicville resident Chad Brown. So we'll take a look at the turf sprint going to the break, and Michael and I will be back with much more right after these messages.
In, gates closed, they're all set. And away they go. All came away well. Diamond Driller, Canadian Ballet, break away fast. Canadian Ballet goes on to lead them, but here's California Flag, and California Flag darts through on the inside to take over. Silver Timber, the Greys right there with Get Funky. Delta Storm now taken back 5th. Then it's Square Eddie and Desert Code. Lord Shanacle making headway in the blue at the rails. 7 off the leaders. They're absolutely flying as expected. Noble Court in the pink cap towards the rear. Then El Gatamalo. Gotta Have Her is a good 11 lengths off these leaders. In behind that comes Strike the Deal. They come down the hill now, and out on the lead we have California Flag and Joe Talamo. They're in front by just under 2 lengths. Canadian Ballet's tracking second, then it's Silver Timber. Up alongside of those is Get Funky. Square Eddie is right there between horses, then Lord Shanacle, Delta Storm, Cannonball, El Gatamalo, Gotta Have Her behind that. They come for home, and California Flag's going away from them. California Flag opens up. Can he keep going now? Delta Storm coming home gamely. Cannonball down the center of the track. Gotta Have Her running late, but it's all California Flag. California Flag, Joe Talamo in the ride of his life, in the race of his life. California Flag has won it. The filly Gotta Have Her a huge second. Cannonball ran on for 3rd, and Delta Storm a creditable 4th.
This is the OTB Television Network.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Mike VIETCH to my left. I'm Mark CUSANO, and the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint goes to California Flag for Brian Corner and Joe Talamo. Joe becoming the 2nd youngest jockey to ever win a Breeders' Cup race. Brilliant, winning by a length and 3/4 over a troubled Gotta Have Her, who ran her eyeballs out despite getting in trouble. First loss ever at 6.5 down the hillside course. You know, Canadian Ballet, 6.5 furlongs beyond her best. Yep. She had to chase the speed, and she held well to run 5th. She really did.
That was it was a wonderful, wonderful effort, and I hope she gets a break, and I hope they structure a good schedule next year because she proved herself worthy of this group.
You know, they grabbed 30,000. Silver Timber was 6th. El Gato Malo 8th. 111-1. Please remember that's 6.5 furlongs. And the big difference was California Flag got a half in 43 under no pressure. A year ago, the half was 41-4, and he was under intense pressure. All right, next up, the Breeders' Cup Sprint. and the post draw unlucky to the favorite Sensational number 1 because he is not terribly quick away from the gate. And as you see, he's going to be outrun early. And Victor Espinoza is going to go to plan B, which is to try to rate him instead of sending him. And plan B turned out to be an absolute disaster. In front is Cost of Freedom. He's going to set the pace. Stalked by Fatal Bullet, number 3. The eventual winner, number 6, Dancing in Silks, currently 4th on the outside. What a finish to the 26th Breeders' Cup Sprint. In a 4-horse photo, Dancing in Silks would prevail over number 4, Crown of Thorns, Cost of Freedom, and Gallego, who is last on the fence to upset the 26th Breeders' Cup Sprint.
Everything about this hindered and bothered and troubled Sensational. He's not a happy camper. He is such a wonderful open free runner, and he never got that chance when he broke slowly against this field here. As for the winner, it's back-to-back in the sprints for California breds. Sensational just found the circumstances too difficult from the get-go, while Cost of Freedom, another Cal bred, was stubborn foe on the front end here late in the game. The winners won 4 straight, but guess what? This was his first graded score. What a place to do it in a career of 13 starts. As far as Gallego, I liked him. I thought the prep here was absolutely perfect. Well, this was just a complete opposite of his last 2 outings in this particular journey down on the rail, trying to find room and so forth. But all congratulations to the winner. And a Cal bred sweep for 2 sprint races, Mark.
Well, you know, you've got to give, first of all, you've got to give Dancing in Silk's owner, Ken Kinnikin, a lot of credit. Because, folks, this is a 25-to-1 shot winning, okay?
Yes, sir.
The owner put up $160,000 to supplement a 25-to-1 shot. Carla Gaines, who suffered the loss of Neshoba's Key, about a year ago.
Yeah.
She said that was absolutely the bottom. Well, this has got to be the top.
Yeah.
As Carla Gaines wins a Breeders' Cup, supplemented for $160,000, they win $1,080,000 by a nose over Crown of Thorns, who would have been my selection had he gone in the dirt mile. I didn't really like him that much in the sprint. Cost of Freedom held on for 3rd. Gallego rallied, I guess, consistently, steadily. Didn't show that tremendous punch. Although in my years of watching racing, when you've got a 1-run deep closer, more often than not, that huge punch normally comes outside of horses.
No, that's exactly,
and not when you're down on the fence.
exactly my thoughts last Saturday. He didn't have the room for his, his persona to do what he does, and that was the story there, I think.
Sensational was 5th at 9-to-5. He has been retired because, he's run like 8 times. And Fatal Bullet, this was pretty much a surprise. And the reason I say that is Fatal Bullet going into this race on synthetic had run 11 times, 9 victories and 2 seconds. And he ran his eyeballs out last year to Midnight Loop.
Against that monster.
Right.
Exactly.
He was 6th.
Yeah.
He was pretty much awful. He was done on the turn.
Yep.
108 flat. Congratulations to the connections of Dancing in Silks, because, folks, every year heading into the Breeders' Cup, we read and hear about all the horses who we would love to see in the Breeders' Cup, but they need to be supplemented. Here's a 25-to-1 shot where the owner says,
how about that?
He says to his trainer, Carla, how's he doing? Yeah. Carla says, I can't have many better. He puts up 160 grand.
Boy.
Congratulations.
Way to go.
That is wonderful. All right. If Bob Baffert thought he had post-position problems when Sensational drew the rail in the sprint, that paled in comparison to the dilemma the Baffert 2-year-old looking at Lucky had here in the juvenile. He was anything but lucky when he drew post 13 of 13. And folks, if you don't think post positions are important, you're dead wrong. Because looking at Lucky, he ran 2nd, but if he wasn't best in here, I haven't seen too many horse races. He's going to fight a wide trip throughout, what apparently was, because sometimes it's difficult to tell on this pro ride stuff, apparently was a pretty slow early pace, and he's going to get beat ahead by number 7, the long shot Vale of York, in the 26th Breeders' Cup Juvenile?
Well, first time Lasix, and as you'll see as they turn for home, a late surge in between horses made this one of the big upsets on the card. If you read his European form, it seemed like Vale of York was a horse that was in search of a running style. That's the way, that was my thinking about him as I tried to handicap this race. He was looking for some kind of comfortable style. I believe I wound up with Aconite in here. He did exit a Group 1 in Italy as he made his synthetic debut there. But I find it interesting, and I'm not being critical with this mark, I find it interesting that in our country, we note differences, and there are differences between synthetics at various tracks. For some reason, the Europeans who come over here, while they do train on it, and it's everywhere over there, it seems, even if they're making synthetic debuts, it does not seem to hinder them when they come to this country and land on a synthetic surface. Why that is, I don't know. Mark's point about looking at Lucky, that's it, folks. I mean, that's all there is to it. He was hindered by the outside. This is another fine effort. He is a very professional racehorse. So eventually, he's got to conquer dirt. I realize
That's right.
that. But he's the leading candidate for division champion, and this was Baffert's best performance on the day. I thought Noble's Promise, the little guy who isn't supposed to be doing this stuff, turned in a very, very good, solid race. And as far as I've read, he may be a candidate for the Hollywood Futurity next month. Baffert's horse is ultra-professional, but as Mark said, that's what cost him this one here.
Well, the winner set a beautiful inside-in-behind trip under Ahmed Ajtebi. I made my first bet sometime in the 1960s. I don't remember exactly what year it was.
Okay.
That marked the first time that I've ever been beaten by a camel jockey.
Okay.
He sat a perfect inside and behind trip, angled out in mid-stretch, and accelerated better than Looking at Lucky,
Now,
because Looking at Lucky had run about 100 yards farther than this horse.
I want you to save that remark because, as you know, I'm in the camp of stop trying to compare us to other sports. There's proof. We're not like any other sport.
And of course, I have now read the first reports, the initial reports, that Vale of York is now the early favorite for next year's Kentucky Derby. Looking at Lucky, beaten ahead, he may go to the Hollywood Futurity. Michael mentioned Noble's Promise, who made the lead in the lane and flattened out to run third. Folks, he missed training time. He missed the workout. And I got to tell you, that may have been the difference
was a big factor.
between winning and running third. Piscatelli set the pace, 48-3, 13, held very well to be fourth. DeFunnybone, the top 2-year-old male here in the East, sat a perfect trip. He stalked Piscatelli through what appeared to be conservative fractions. And Piscatelli was 50-1. And Piscatelli held on well to be fourth, proving that the pace was a bit conservative. DeFunnybone ran last of 13. Give me a quick explanation of that. The dirt runners, as we know, were just
It's
dreadful.
been dismal for
but
2
that
years.
performance, and listen, Joe Drape is a friend of ours. He's a colleague from the New York Times. But Joe, how can you write that you want Santa Anita to be the permanent home of the Breeders' Cup? You're never going to get any horses to come from the East because the dirt horses apparently have no realistic chance over this surface. For DeFunnybone to be last with a
Off
perfect
where
trip,
he was with that
a
trip?
perfect trip,
Yeah,
was unbelievable. But congratulations to Ahmed Ajtebi. I have now been beaten by a camel jockey.
Pronounced that very well.
How was
too.
that? That was pretty
excellent.
good. Yes. Well, I said it enough times between last Saturday and this morning. All right. Next up, the 26th renewal of the Breeders' Cup Mile, and another favorite burdened with the extreme outside post. And here she is, the defending champ, the brilliant Goldie Kova, shockingly beaten into third in her final prep for the Breeders' Cup, the Prix de la Forêt, when she was gunned from an outside post. Here, Olivier Pellier is going to get her to settle. He's going to take her back, try to save some ground around the first turn, as a very fast pace develops, set by Gladiatoris, Cowboy Cal, and shockingly, what's the script? The latter, a confirmed one-run deep closer. Now, the big question going into this year's mile, Could Goldikova overcome, as the Europeans stated, the coffin box draw, the extreme outside post? Well, the answer was a resounding yes, as she would go on to defeat Courageous Cat, who would run the race of his life, and just enough humor to defend her title in the Breeders' Cup Mile.
Well, I don't know where you put this gal in terms of championships and voting, because I have to tell you, this was one marvelous effort. Freddie Head and others in that camp advised us to forget the loss in the Prix de la Forêt, and we showed it a couple times on this show, and they were absolutely right. They were absolutely right. The outside post, well, it was one of a number of issues I think she had in the race, and yet she was so superior to this bunch. And while I thought this was a more accomplished and she had more hurdles to overcome here, you know, her utter class gets this job done. There were just issues every step of the way, and yet she manages to get it done. This is real class that you're watching right here. Courageous Cat, as Mark noted, came off a very, very gritty third in the Jamaica, nearly pulled off a stunner. And the Jamaica's a new grade 1. I think this will strengthen to hold that particular ranking for the Jamaica. I was shocked when they actually put that up there. Just Enough Humor went back to his good turf form on good footing, and I thought that he would. I had my biggest disappointment of the day in here when Zaquinto, or however you say it, he just absolutely was nowhere and finished last. He was one of the wise guy horses, and I wanted to be one of the wise guys. Mark, I've read nothing, or have you, about anything happening in this race. It was a terrible effort.
Couldn't handle the final turn.
Yeah,
got to the
it
second
absolutely
turn,
almost blew the
couldn't
second
handle
turn.
it.
Yeah, I mean,
very unusual situation,
yeah.
but there she is.
Oh, boy.
Emulating the great Miesk.
Oh.
You know, what an accomplishment
It
for
is.
Freddie
No,
Head. I mean, he's
you know,
got one horse
just-
that he brings to the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah.
He's won 2 years in a row.
Oh.
She's simply sensational.
She really is.
Granted, our American turf horses, I have preached this to you for years. Our American turf horses, generally speaking, appear to be better than they really are because they just compete against each other. And when you get the Europeans come over, you know, and listen, Courageous Cat ran terrific. Just Enough Humor ran a very good third from a difficult post. And Court Vision ran certainly a very respectable fourth from the inside. But she overcomes post 11.
Yeah.
She overcomes the trip
Yes, sirree.
across the
Yes,
Atlantic
sirree.
again. What a very, very special filly
Yeah.
she is. And what a special job Freddie Head has done with her.
you know,
I mean, that
and-
really is... Listen, Freddie's had... I don't think he started any other horse in the Breeders' Cup. Has he, other than Goldikova?
I don't know. I didn't
He's
look
got
it
2
up.
wins.
I mean, it's just really wonderful, and you know so very well. I mean, oftentimes when a horse does what she did and runs out of form, sometimes that wrecks you till the
Yes,
next
it
day.
does.
He
Yes, it
managed
does.
to keep her composed for her regular form, and they told us all that. But I mean, folks, that's a very dangerous thing. I mean, a lot of trainers will tell you, no, I need time to go back to what I'm supposed to do if something goes wrong. Look at what she did. It was so terrific. Gosh.
And from post 11.
Oh.
The only horse in the field who could possibly have overcome post
Yeah.
11.
Yeah.
The speed, Gladiatorus, Cowboy Cal finished 9th and 10th. The shocker to me was what's the script? Basically, he's a one-run deep
think I
closer.
picked him
That's
last
what he
year.
does.
Yeah.
And that style would have fit this race perfectly. Yeah. But John Sadler said to Kent DeSormo, I want him close. Now, folks, in some foreign countries, when a trainer decides to change a horse's running style completely, he must go to the stewards and inform them of the action. And the stewards would then inform the public, but not in the United States, not North America. You can do anything you want. So anybody who backed What's the Script, thinking that there was going to be a lively pace and he was going to make one run off it, had to be scratching their heads wondering what he's doing on the pace. And of course, he ran 8th. But all congratulations to Freddie Head and to Goldikova. It's amazing.
It is amazing. No, it is amazing.
It is an amazing feat as she goes back to back and may try next year for a 3-2.
That's right.
Wouldn't that be something? All congratulations. All right, we are up to our next break on this November 14th edition of the program. Thank you so much for having joined us. When Michael and I return, we are going to take a look at $8 million worth of races in the Turf and the Classic. As we go to this break, the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile on the Pro Ride with a somewhat questionable field for $1 million. I don't know how else to say it. The 7-5 favorite, number 1, Master Craftsman. I thought the biggest threat to Master Craftsman could really be Midshipman, because even though he had only one race this year, he figured to be the controlling speed. The question was, would one race, would he be tight enough with one sprint race?
I had him up there too.
You know?
And a remark before we go. If you had talked to the Ramseys the day before all this happened, and they had 4 or 5 horses in the Cup, they probably would have picked this as the least likely winner. And this is the one that they got.
And the Ramseys had furthest land, of course, going in here. So we will take a look at the Breeders' Cup Dirt/Pro Ride Mile going to the break, and Michael and I will be back with a look at the Turf and the Classic right after these messages.
Down the backstretch they go now, and it's Garrett Gomez and Midshipman. He's taken a tight hold, but Midshipman's keen to go on. He's tugging his way along up front. Nico Bay second, Mr. Sydney on the far side. Down at the rail we have Furthest Land in the 4th position, been followed by Mambo Master. Now here's Master Craftsman and Johnny Murtaugh. They're down at the rail and they back in 6th. They have just over 4 lengths to make up. Then it's Pyro, Chocolate Candy. Bull's Bay has 6 to make up as well. They're taking closer order. The trailer now is Ready Zecco. Coming to the top of the lane now, and Midshipman, he's looking like he's got something left out here. He's keen to go on. Nico Bay's in there. Down at the rail, Furthest Land. Now, let's see. Here's Master Craftsman going to hook to the outside. Mr. Sydney's in with a shot as well. Homeward bound, and Midshipman just in front now. Running a huge one as Furthest Land in the red cap. Then Nico Bay. Master Craftsman's trying to re-rally on the inside. And here comes Master Craftsman down at the rail now. Midshipman, Furthest Land running a huge one. Ready Zecco out of nowhere, but Furthest Land in a shocker, and Furthest Land has upset them. Red Ozeki flying late, might have got second. Right there as well was Midshipman. Master Craftsman just did not have it. He finished 4th.
This is the OTB Television Network.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Mike VIETCH to my left. I'm Mark CUSANO. And Furthest Land, claimed by Mike Maker and the Ramseys for $35,000, wins the $1 million Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, ridden by Julian Leparoux, who captured the Bill Shoemaker Award by winning 3 Breeders' Cup races. In fact, he was the only jockey to win multiple Breeders' Cup races this year. Julian, a perfect inside in-behind trip, parlayed that into a $44.60 upset in the Dirt Mile. Ready Zecco second at 24-1. Midshipman was, in fact, in need of another race.
I agree.
He got tired
Yes,
in deep stretch, finishing 3rd in front of the favorite Master Craftsman, who has been retired. Just want to give you an idea. You know, I was saying for weeks coming up to this year's Breeders' Cup, and I felt more strongly this year than I did last year, that even horses who were working well over the surface, basically dirt horses who came here and worked well, that did not give you any real indication they were going to run well, and I think Pyro was a perfect example. Godolphin, Rick Matee had Angel Cordero come out, fly out several times,
That's right.
work Pyro. And Angel's a tremendous professional. And Angel said to Rick, he's handling the pro ride as well as he did the dirt at Saratoga. Pyro ran last.
Yes.
So, folks, it really didn't matter if you worked well over the surface. Okay, next up, the $3 million Breeders' Cup Turf. And the Europeans were calculating what 3 million American meant in euros. The defending champ, number 2 Conduit. 6-1 last year, he was the 9-10 favorite. The second choice at 3-1, his stablemate, number 7 Spanish Moon. The third choice at 570-1, another Euro, the filly Dare Me, number 5. And the fourth choice, the speedball in front, the American Precious Passion. Elvis Trujillo is gonna let him roll. Catch me if you can is what Precious Passion always says to his rivals. And the only one who could catch him was Conduit. But boy, did he have to work for it. I love this horse. Precious Passion hates to let horses run by him. And he fought courageously. But in the end, Conduit. And Ryan Moore is going to make a sneaky good move right here to get Conduit from last and get some position. And in the end, Conduit was just a little bit better, giving Sir Michael Stout his 5th Breeders' Cup victory. I believe 4 of them have come in the Breeders' Cup Turf.
All right. Well, I believe I said last week that speed is dangerous at any distance, and Precious Passion almost pulled this off. And he does not like horses to go by, and we've seen him in some of his best grade 1 performances. When somebody hooks him in just when you think that he's got to be exhausted, he really goes to the bottom of his reserve and finds another gear. I don't know what he does it on but sheer willpower, but this is just really something to watch. As for Conduit, I feel that he did show the depth and the real depth of his class by getting up to win this. It was a long, long drive over a very stubborn foe, and probably only Conduit could have pulled this off. I figure that he has now taken away the Pro Tem Division title from Gio Ponti, and I don't want any raised eyebrows here, since there's a real trendy logic to the Breeders' Cup, which says you have to show up on the big day or else. Now, Gio showed up. He just showed up in the wrong race, since he chose not to tackle the defending champion. In doing so, his cross-country dominance in California, New York, and Chicago may not account for much, and I think y'all better chew on something like that. But let's go back to Conduit here. Class, class, class for number 2.
That is very well said. He actually slipped coming off the final turn. He lost his balance coming off the final turn, and he fought hard to run down a game and gutsy and courageous Precious Passion. I thought that with Spanish Moon and Dare Me making runs at Precious Passion, they would soften him up, and I love the fact that Conduit was going to make the final run. Well, you know what? They couldn't make runs at Precious Passion because he just kept going. I thought that Mary Hartman should be, I know she wanted to win it, obviously. She's got to be absolutely thrilled with that performance. Conduit's going to go to the Japan Cup. Dare Me was 3rd, Spanish Moon 4th. The other Americans, Monzante and Telling, were last and next to last. It just dreadful American grass runners. But congratulations to Sir Michael Stout and to Ryan Moore for the repeat victory of Conduit in the Breeders' Cup Turf. And now, the 26th Breeders' Cup Classic. For the first time in the history of the race, we had a gate scratch when Quality Road refused. The 5-2 betting favorite, the unbeaten mare Zenyatta, number 4, bidding to become the first female in history to win the Classic. The 3-1 second choice, and I really thought he was overbet because of the results from last year's Classic, was number 10, Rip Van Winkle. But folks, everybody was ready for this race. The 50,000 plus in attendance, And for the call of the 26th Breeders' Cup Classic, here's Trevor Denman.
$5 million Breeders' Cup Classic. Fields sent on their way in the Breeders' Cup Classic to the roar of the Santa Anita crowd. Regal Ransom danced away quickly. Zenyatta is dead last. Zenyatta's dead last early. It's Regal Ransom going on. Gio Ponti, Einstein is right there. Colonel John in the white colours. Summerbird has the red cap in the vanguard too. Rip Van Winkle is on the outside and Twice Over racing right behind them. They tightly grouped and not in the big hurry out on the lead. Then it's Awesome Jim. Gio Ponti's back fourth last. Been followed in by Richard's Kid. Then comes Mind That Bird and Zenyatta is dead last. Zenyatta last, got to be giving them about 10, 11 length start. They go to the three-quarter pole now in the Classic, and it's Regal Ransom just setting a sensible pace, not in a big hurry out here. Rip Van Winkle now goes up second, and Colonel John scrapes the paint in third. Einstein's right there too. Girolamo, white cap far side. Here's Kentis Ormo and Summerbird. They 6 at the rail, just 5 off the leader. Then it comes Twice Over, Awesome Gem, and Gio Ponti's giving them 7 length start. Then it's Richard's Kid. Now here's Zenyatta. Zenyatta is still a good 10, 11 off the leaders. And then it's 4 back to Mind That Bird. A half mile to go now in the Classic, and still the leader is Regal Ransom, a length and a half. Rip Van Winkle being sent along after him. Then Colonel John. On the far side, Girolamo. Einstein is right there. Summerbird at the rail. Twice Over is next. Then Awesome Gem. Gio Ponti's behind that. Then Richard's Kid. And now here's Zenyatta. And let's see. Zenyatta has a lot of ground to make up. Zenyatta, if she wins this, she'll be a super horse. She's starting to pick them off, though. Zenyatta going to hook to the outside. Meanwhile, it's Colonel John. Summerbird in the red cap. But now Zenyatta's come to the outside. Zenyatta coming flying on the grandstand side. Gio Ponti on the inside. Summerbird is right there. This is unbelievable.
Great Zenyatta closes out her brilliant career by making history and capturing the 26th Breeders' Cup Classic by an expanding length over Gio Ponti and the other European Twice Over. Benefiting from a flawless ride from Hall of Famer Mike Smith, Zenyatta cut the corner, eased to the middle of the track, then overcame a potentially dicey situation in mid-stretch when Smith altered course to the outside, and once clear, the massive mare kicked it into another gear to run down a game Gio Ponti, and in the process, run her record to a perfect 14 for 14, and finally earn the respect and recognition that she so deserves. I thought it was one of the greatest moments in Breeders' Cup history, in an ideal way to possibly cap off an incredible career. She had trouble loading, which is a bit unusual for her. She broke on her wrong lead, but Mike Smith deftly guided her through and around horses, and Zenyatta became the first female to win the Breeders' Cup Classic. Michael, this was one of the great moments in Breeders' Cup history.
Well, Mark, I mean, it's immortal, and I'm luckily we're a week out because I did indeed weep, as I did weep for Rachel that day at Saratoga. I haven't found the really right words and way to put my arms around what we saw here. Just forget the synthetic, folks. This is a great racehorse. She did what she was supposed to do, but there are impressions that I have. You wouldn't want her to have trouble on the biggest race of her spectacular unblemished career, and there it is. She doesn't brake properly. She has to wait for a reload at the gate because of Quality Road's utter freakazoid behavior. And Todd, I feel so bad for you because it's such a horrible thing to have to go through. And then you talk about Mike Smith and the ride that Mike Smith turned in. I mean, I on second and third watch there, Calvin Burrell popped into mind because of the Mind That Bird experience. Well, again, these are just off-the-cuff observations that I'm having trouble put away because this was such a mountainous effort. I mean, Calvin Burrell's miracle ride, he only had to worry about one path. Mike Smith had about 3 paths to worry about, and when she sees daylight the first time, he loses that path, and she still manages to get out. And here's my other just off-the-cuff observation. In her career, and I know I've said this before, this is a very fast horse, but it doesn't ever seem to get appreciated, maybe because she's out there, but more importantly, maybe because her style of running doesn't let you see it. I will say again what I said before. when the first waves of the debate began to formulate after summer at Saratoga. And that is that in this not to happen, but everyone's dream fable rematch of these two, and I'm not tooting my own horn, I said then I would not say that it was a slam dunk for Rachel because this mare has never really been taken to the bottom. I think that's the way I described her when I picked her. Mark, I got to be honest with you. I don't know if physically she got to the bottom even here.
Absolutely
I mean,
not.
she'd have won this by 10 lengths.
Absolutely
You know,
not.
the mile and a quarter meant nothing to me. I was literally not worried about that. If this is a mile and a half old-fashioned real classic distance, she wins by 5 to 10. She's just absolutely magnificent. I can't say it. I don't have the right way to say it, but she is just tremendous.
There aren't many people who dislike synthetic more than me. What synthetic has done during the career of Zenyatta is people have used that as an excuse for her, not giving her the credit that she truly deserves. Zenyatta, I can make a very, very strong case that the one race she had on dirt in only her 4th career start was as brilliant as any other race she ever had, with the possible exception of this one. She is one of the greatest race mares I've ever seen in my life. You know, and we've been around quite a while. And I
we've
know
seen a
it's,
few of 'em,
I
you
know
know.
it's sacrilegious to some people to put her in the same category as a ruffian or a personal ensign or a lady secret. I think she's better than
It isn't
personal
to me.
ensign.
It isn't
Honest
to
to
me.
God, I think she is absolutely great. And I think, unfortunately, up until this race, the races that her connections chose, they chose the easy way out for her. And listen, she proves, and I'm almost 100% convinced they never got to the bottom of her. There's still more
I'm
there.
okay with that.
But,
yeah.
But by not letting her strut her stuff, folks, she could have, if her connections had allowed it, she could have had one of the greatest careers in the modern era of any filly or mare. They could have gone to the Classic last year and she could have won. They could have gone to the Hollywood Gold Cup and she would have dusted males. They could have gone to the Pacific Classic. And it's fine that they did what they felt was right by her. But what I'm saying is it cost her dearly in the eyes of so many racing fans. I am so thrilled that they finally gave her a chance to race against the best that is on offer. You know, you may think it's a somewhat questionable field. That's the best on offer. They gave her a chance, and she responded. Because how many folks at the 5/16 pole gave her a real chance? I mean, she is just great, absolutely great. So John Sheriffs and Jerry and Ann Moss, I mean, all congratulations.
Without question.
I
Without
still
question.
feel as though if they could go back and do it over again, I feel as though they should have given her the chance earlier on to prove how great she is. Because, partner, winning races like the Ladies' Secret and the Clement Hirsch back-to-back years isn't going to do it with racing fans when you just tower over your
I
opposition.
happen to agree with that.
You
Yeah,
know,
I happen to agree with that.
So
yeah.
I really
Yeah.
feel bad. I listen. We haven't discussed this. I just said it. I think she's one of the greatest fillies or mares I've ever seen in the modern era.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you put her in her record and her career record against the likes of a Personal Ensign and a Ruffian?
She's on the list that you mentioned. I wouldn't necessarily automatically jump and say I think she's better than Personal Ensign, simply because Personal Ensign had, and again, I don't want to go to couldas, okay? That's not the story here. Personal Ensign was one of those 1 in 10,000 who had a will to win that Zenyatta has. So I don't know that I can say that. Ruffian still remains, you know, on anybody's, at least mine, you know, list. But she's earned it. She belongs there. She's Busher. She's Twilight Tear. She's Conniver and Gallarette. She's Beldame. I mean, that's what she is. I don't doubt it in the least. I would have said that if she had chosen the Ladies' Classic and not this race. I don't hold the synthetic part against her. I have different feelings than my colleague on synthetics and where they maybe should or should not go. She's just so obviously an immortal, and she is. And I love her for it, and I love what Sheriffs and Moss did. It's an utterly class act, but that's what they chose to do in 2009. And okay, you do, what you think in your heart is best for your horse.
As a one-run deep closer, and we can go back through history and talk about the one-run deep closers. One-run deep closers are always at the mercy of the pace.
That's right.
She's 14 for 14. Well, she's faced all kinds of pace
sirree.
scenarios, and she's overcome them all. I cannot think of another one-run deep closer who was able to overcome bad pace scenarios.
I agree. No, I agree.
I
She's
you know,
I know.
I just think she's absolutely great. If, and I now have to put this in, because our associate producer Julie Hoxie spoke to John Sheriffs yesterday, and he would not come out and say that she's absolutely 100% retired. She came out of the race great. He said she wasn't even blowing hard.
I totally I accept that completely.
She
I do.
jogged
Without
yesterday
question.
at Hollywood
You know,
Park.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I can't think of a better way to end your career than beating the boys and
Agree with
making
that,
history
too.
in the
Yeah.
Breeders' Cup Classic. But, you know, it's, according to John, it's not 100% certain that she's going to be retired. So, Gio Ponte, how about that effort?
Fine effort.
Tremendous.
Wonderful effort. Absolutely.
He's going to stay in training, and I would certainly think they're going to try to do Dubai World
Yep,
Cup on the
yep.
synthetic. Summerbird was fourth. And, you know, Tim Ice was telling you the truth in the respect that he was training very well over the surface, and he was very healthy. But, folks, how many times do you have to beat your head against the wall? Dirt horses just don't do, and he ran fourth.
Yeah.
Don't do terribly well on that stuff. Colonel John, who loomed a major threat turning for home, flattened out to fifth. He's been retired. The shocker to me was Einstein. He was my second choice. I fully expected him to run well, and he got steadied sharply going to the far turn, but he wasn't running well. He was 11th. And Girolamo, unbeaten on dirt this year. And yes, they were asking a lot of him to go 1.25 miles and to go 2 turns. But brilliant on dirt this year, did not beat a single horse on the pro ride. So, the victory, the historic victory of Zenyatta, and the emotional victory. I mean,
That's
the place
right.
went crazy.
It absolutely is.
Absolutely went crazy.
The nobility of the thoroughbred.
Now opens the debate for the 2009 Horse of the Year. Is it Zenyatta? 5 for 5. Folks, please understand, 14 for 14 is meaningless when it comes to the 2009 Horse of the Year. She was 5 for 5 with a great and historic victory in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Rachel was 8 for 8, winning on 7 different surfaces, winning on wet tracks, dry tracks, and beating males 3 times. Folks, what I am about to say, many of you are going to shake your head and say, what in God's name is he talking about? But it is not necessarily the best horse who wins Horse of the Year every year. It is the one the voters feel accomplished the most. And I say that, and I think a perfect example is in 1997, Favorite Trick won Horse of the Year. Favorite Trick, in the overall scheme of things, probably couldn't have beaten 50 older horses. He was a 2-year-old, but he had the most accomplished season. So, partner, we know your feelings. Did the Breeders' Cup Classic change your vote pattern?
Look, it changed nothing for me, and you framed the argument very well. The title is Horse of the Year. Rachel was headline news, April for the Fantasy Stakes, May for the Oaks and the Preakness, June for the Mother Goose, August for the Haskell, September for the Woodward. She left her cozy sophomore filly division on 3 occasions against males, including elders in the Woodward. As Mark pointed out, she won stakes races from February to September in Louisiana, Arkansas, Kentucky, Maryland, New Jersey, and New York. She beat 7 Grade 1 winners in 8 state races at 7 different tracks in 6 different states. Zenyatta, 5 for 5, more earnings, 3.3 to 2.9, stepped out of her cozy older female division only for the Classic. She never left her home state while winning 4 stakes races, at 3 different tracks. Prior to the Classic, she defeated exactly 2 Grade 1 winners in those 4 events, one of which was her stablemate, Life is Sweet. She, on the season, defeated a total of 10 grade winners. Mark, I think, made a very important point. She beat the quality that was on the table on that day in the Classic. I think it was the best field of the year. I have no argument with that. But she was racing headline news last weekend. And now we're sailing into the uncharted waters of, should we have an option on the table for a dual horse of the year? I'll predict right here, the steering committee's going to do it.
Really?
And when they do it, I want you to think of one thing. There's going to be a popular, politically correct move to have a dual horse of the year, okay? I hope they don't, because if they do that, taking this argument to the next place, you better be prepared to do it for any number of divisions in which Mark and I and racing fans almost annually argue about who deserves a certain title. So while I have made that statement, I hope I'm wrong on that statement, because some of this thinking about Horse of the Year has bordered on the irrational. It still is an easy decision for me to make. I happen to think Mark's remark is accurate. The best horse not necessarily gets it. Favorite Trick I voted for that year. He was Horse of the Year.
And
Skip Away was Horse of the
Yes.
Year when Awesome Again
Yes.
won the Classic,
Yeah.
okay? I wish it weren't so. Please don't go down the road of the dual Horse of the Year option. Please. I could say more, but I'd need something on the crawl line. The following 5 minutes are dangerous to your health.
Well, we don't have 5 minutes.
We don't have
left,
5 minutes.
So much more discussion on this next week. But please understand that the votes, and you know, and this is a little bit of a, I guess, from a sentimental angle. They're both very worthy, okay? And I hate to
I
see
even
that
agree
one
with
is
that
against-
statement. As worthiness,
Yes,
yeah.
of course. And as Michael brought up, people have been talking about co-horses of the year. It could happen in the voting, but it's a tremendous long shot. They would each have to get the exact same number of votes to be co-horses of the year. More discussion on this next week, as well as reading of your number of
Thank you
emails
for
and
all your
letters.
writings
So we
this
will
last
get to
week.
those
Yes.
next week. If you would like to correspond with us, if you've got a thought about the Horse of the Year balloting, about the 26th Breeders' Cup Classic, you can reach us at Down the Stretch, Mark and Mike, Capital District OTB 510 Smith, Schenectady 12305, or electronically at viewermail at capitalotb.com. Time to thank all the folks who helped get this week's show on the air. Pete Persico directed, and Pat Peretta and Dan Hayes and Kurt Flick, our associate producer, Julie Hoxie. It was really fun looking back at those races. And next week, again, more discussion on the Horse of the Year situation and the reading of your emails and letters. I don't like synthetic, but that performance at the end of the day was monumental.
It's
It was
just-
historic. It was sensational.
I don't care what it happened.
Yeah, I know.
I really don't.
It really was. So have a good weekend.
You too.
Ladies
Yeah.
and gentlemen, as always, thank you so very much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch. We appreciate it. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy all the racing action right here at Capitol. Have a terrific upcoming week. From all of us here at Down the Stretch, we'll see you next week.